similar to the customs of Yom
They're different than the bar mitzvah, imagine.
Austin in Texas. That was actually the first time.
Was closed in 1997.
"40 years ago this week, we celebrated a miraculous victory, the victory of the Six-Day War. But I lived through the terror that we experienced in Israel before the war started. I will never forget the sound of the broadcaster on the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan radio saying, 'You Zionist Jews, you Zionist dogs, you will be dead in the sea tomorrow.' We heard about the fact that Rav Goren, Shlomo Goren, the head of the armed forces, the rabbi, went around scouting the national parks to look to see where he could find, God forbid, graves for the anticipated 10,000 dead that were expected as a result of the first day of the war only. And I'll never forget my poor parents who were trying to save their only daughter by shipping me back to Bulgaria, which is where I was born, because even Bulgaria was considered safer than Israel at the time. And then a miracle happened. The Israeli Air Force decimated the Egyptian Air Force on the ground, and I'll never forget the voice of Commander MATCKH saying, "Har Habayit beyadenu," Temple Mount is in our hands. After 2,000 years, Jerusalem was back in our hands. It was amazing. So what does a good Jewish Israeli, proud Israeli girl do after the war? Well, naturally, she goes to help the Arabs. Because if I will help them, then they will see I'm not a Jewish dog. I'm a nice person. And maybe they will even love me. So what did I do? I went to help the residents of the Samaria and Judea territories that had fallen in our hands against our will because we had asked King Hussein to stay out of the war. And I went to help the Arabs to export their goods to Europe, to Australia, to the United States. I was the first person to send mother of pearl and olive wood products from Bethlehem to the West. My best client was Ilyas Farij, who became mayor of Bethlehem. This was the response that I had to winning the war after having lived through the terror. Almost 30 years later, I experienced another terrifying experience. I saw a young girl as part of a broadcast, probably in the same broadcasting station of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, but this time it was in the Arab-Palestinian Authority broadcasting station, and this time it was on television. And I saw this girl, 6 years old, surrounded by her teachers, by her schoolmates, screaming out joyfully, "I will blow myself up at the gates of Jerusalem. I will be a shaheed for Allah, a martyr for Allah." Little girls and Mickey Mouse applauding them. And I said, this is the most terrifying experience that one can imagine. When I found out that this was not an isolated incident, this was part of an educational system that was not only perpetrated on innocent children in the territories, but it was all over. Even in Europe, even in America, in Islamic schools, they were teaching children to become martyrs, to blow themselves up for Allah, to destroy the big Satan. That's America. The little Satan, that's Israel. I think they were reserving the medium Satan for Europe. And I said, oh my God, this has to be exposed. This is a travesty of the magnitude that I don't think we have ever seen before since the Hitler Youth. But this is millions of children being taught hatred and violence. This must be fought. So I formed MATCKH, Mothers Against Teaching Children to Kill and Hate, in the image of MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, an organization in the United States. And I enlisted the help of mothers and children to fight this terrible travesty. I went all over the world. As I was introduced by Mrs. Liberov, I made a film, and it was shown all over in all the schools. And I figured that mothers and children could raise the consciousness of the world against this. Now, what was the difference between my two responses to terror? One, after 1967, the proud Israeli student of Hebrew University, and then a 30-year-old later person. It was the transformation that I went through, a paradigm shift in my perception of the world. It was the shift and the transformation of a proud Israeli becoming a proud Jew. Let me tell you about it. I was raised in Israel. I went to Hebrew University, and I was very successful. I worked for Israeli television, and then I decided Israel was too small for me. So I decided to leave the land of milk and honey and come to the land of gold and money and seek my fortune. And I landed a job at NBC TV after a stint in public broadcasting. And I landed a job as a producer in a local NBC New York, where I was the producer of an interview segment that was part of a 2-hour local broadcast called 5 Minutes With. At the time, there was no other talk shows. There was only the Today Show and my show. There was no Oprah, no Jerry Springer, Leaky Bekia, equivalent shows that are proliferating the airwaves today. And my job was to decide, literally, who would live and who would die on NBC TV. All the who's in the world passed through my office. Anybody who was plugging anything. I can't even count. I wrote them down so I shouldn't forget. I interviewed the likes of Pavarotti, Baryshnikov, Makarova, Dr. Spock, Dr. Barnard, Edward Heath, Rabin, Begin, Abba Eban, Diane, Kissinger, Reagan, Carter, Gregory Peck, Sophia Loren, Betty Davis, Michael Jordan. No, that was later when I wasn't in that show. But Muhammad Ali, Pele. So you can imagine this girl off the boat from Israel is living the dream, pinching myself. Could this be really happening to me? Is this my life? And as this is going on, part of me is saying, oh, as part of Camp David, I was the one who translated Begin's speech when Sadat surprised him in the Knesset in that year, in November 1979, after Camp David. And I couldn't believe my fortune. But something started gnawing at me. What's it all about? Is this what life is about? And two incidents were the propelling catalysts in my life, which I'd like to tell you about. Incident number one. John Travolta, new star after Saturday Night Fever. I get the first interview. My heart is pounding with excitement. He comes to my studio, surrounded by an entourage, press agents, secretaries. I can't believe it. This big star is in my office. And I wrote an introduction. In it, I said that even though he was a phenomenal dancer, not all the critics were unanimous in their appraisal of his acting abilities. This was what the anchorman was going to introduce him by. When I turned around, his agent Bob Lamont looked at my notes and said, if you plan to say this on the air, we're out of here. I said, how dare you read my notes? But the door is open and you may leave. And they did leave. As they were filing out, I asked them, turning to John Travolta, I said, don't you have something to say on the subject? And this is what he did. He was this megastar. The people that we looked to up in the big screen couldn't decide the fate of his own interview. He was a puppet on a string, part of a media apparatus. This was one incident. Another incident was in 1975, in that historic day, November 10th, 37 years after Kristallnacht, the wise United Nations, and I'm being sarcastic, decided to vote that Zionism is racism. Amazing, the date coincidence, but there's nothing coincidental. And I got a call as producer of the 5 Minutes with interview show, Mrs. Resnick. I was Mrs. City, I'm sorry, at the time I wasn't married. Mrs. City, this is Dory Sherry. He was the head of 20th Century Fox and the head of the Anti-Defamation League. I really think that you should refute the fact that Zionism is racism. You should have an interview to indicate that it's not. What a great idea, I thought, and voiced it. But what does a good Israeli, liberal, feminist, American, humanist, ethicist, and maybe a little Jewish do? What is their first response? Well, I'm not going to have a one-sided interview. I am going to invite the PLO. At the time, they only had observer status. I'm going to give them half of my podium so that they can express the fact that Zionism is racism. So I decided to call the PLO, even though it was illegal for Israelis to make contact with them at the time. Hello. As I said, I was not married then, so my name was Molly Sidi. Sidi is a Moorish and Arabic name, meaning probably my ancestors got it, as we are Sephardic in Spain, means Lord or Master, and it's a word in Arabic. So I pick up the phone. Hello, Mr. PLO, this is Molly Sidi from NBC, and I would like to invite you to come and be interviewed on the fact that Zionism is racism. Merhaba, kif halak, salamu alaikum. I said, I'm sorry, sir, I do not speak Arabic. Molly Sidi, you don't speak Arabic? So where are you from, Molly Sidi? I am from Tel Aviv, Israel, I reply. After the deathly silence on the phone, he says, you are from Tel Aviv, Israel, and you want me to say that Zionism is racism? You see, because I think he knew I was an idiot, but I didn't. So I think you're getting the picture of this young lady who comes to America literally pinching herself with the fortune that she has landed this amazing job, feeling that she's running the world, but something is saying, there must be more to life. There must be a meaning to life. So I decide that I'm going to take a leave of absence and I'm going to take a trip around the world. And in the subsequent 6 months, everybody who comes into my office, including presidents, I say, who do you know around the world? Could you give me a letter of introduction? And I accumulate a portfolio of myself with these pictures of these dignitaries and celebrities and letters of recommendation. And I set out to find I don't know what. And I start going, it's February, it's cold, so I head to South America. And Panama, Peru, Machu Picchu, and I arrive in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. There, samba is still in the air just after Mardi Gras, and it's a long story, but I needed to get certification that I was Jewish. So I went to one of my newly acquired friends who seemed to be a perfect person to give me a recommendation for a rabbi, the kind of rabbi that I could relate to, because he had his own island and his own plane, and he was dating the illegitimate daughter of the Cardinal of Rio. So I figured he was safe bet to give me the name of a swinging rabbi, somebody that I could relate to. And indeed, I did not even check him out. So when I make an appointment, I arrive at the address given to me, and it's Friday evening, and I knock on the door, and the door is open, and I see them. He's got the beard, she's got that thing on her head, and I said, oh my God, it's the black ones. It's the black ones. How did I end up here? But in Rome you do as the Romans do, and you behave yourself. So I smile, and she said, Shabbat Shalom, hitlakte nerot. Good Shabbos, did you light candles? No, I reply, I did not light candles. Would you like to light? Now, you've got to understand that for me, this was at best Fiddler on the Roof, but really it was voodoo. I was a sophisticated Upper West Side American Israeli who didn't mumble when I communed with my creator. I was a cardiac Jew. But I said, okay, I'm going to do it. And I forced myself to do my first mitzvah. I lit candles. And before I had time to analyze the mixture of awe and disgust that I was experiencing, in walks this elegant-looking young lady. And she's wearing the Gucci and the Pucci and the Bali and the Mali. And she is bright and intelligent and charming, and she's their daughter. I said, what are you doing with them? She says, well, I'm preparing to get married. would you like to see a picture of my fiance? I said, of course. She brings me a picture. I look at it. I said, oh my God, how can you tell them apart? They all look the same. I said, listen, I'm going to help you run away. I'm going to get you out of here. You're smart. You really, I admire your parents, and of course you should respect them, but... And I start to badger her. I said, come on, you really believe all that stuff? You really believe that a woman should be a second-class citizen? She should be behind a curtain? And the men, they get all the... And so on and so forth. And I'm asking and she's answering. And I'm charmed by her. I'm falling in love with her. I can't believe it. I said, listen, I don't have time now, but can I see you again? She says, sure. Would you like to come to shul with me tomorrow? Well, shul, mosque, ashram, church, I don't discriminate. I'm a liberal. I'll go anywhere. Sure, I'll come to shul with you. Next morning, I take my car from the Copacabana Palace Hotel where I'm staying, and I drive myself off to shul. And for the first time, I watch her as she does those steps. It's the Shmoneh Esrei steps, the silent prayer. To me, it looked like the Jewish cha-cha-cha. And I couldn't believe it. She was so fervent, so sincere in her praying. And I knew she had something that I wanted, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And again, I continue my questions. Can I see you again? I say, sure. How about I take you for a ride tomorrow? A ride? You mean they let you drive? All the stereotypical images that we have of religious people. She comes in a car to my hotel at the Copacabana Palace Hotel. And she takes me to the Botanical Garden in Rio. It's one of those beautiful places in the world. And it ended up being my Gan Eden. You see, because I want to digress for a moment. The real reason I came to the United States was because I was enamored of the American Constitution. As a student of political science in the Hebrew University, I even worked for Golda Meir, I was very interested in democracy. And I came to America in 1972 during Watergate. And I was witnessing the survival of a democracy because of its constitution. I used to walk around with a Bill of Rights in one pocket and the Constitution in the other. It was my raison d'etre. And here I am in the Botanical Garden of Rio, and I'm badgering this poor, young, innocent, wonderful girl. And I'm saying, come on, we're a racist religion, let's admit it. What's this business of being a chosen people? Chosen, and the rest of the world isn't chosen? And then it hits me like a ton of bricks, and I said, oh my God, I have been impressed by the American Constitution, and my Constitution, my Torah, of what I know nothing about. I could speak 7 languages, been all over the world. I was even attempting to learn the Bhagavad Gita in Sanskrit. But my Torah, 0 zilch. I said, oh God, you really exist. There's a purpose to life. You have a plan for humanity. And it's my job to find out how I fit in. And because you have done this for me, without heartache, without accident, without suffering, I'm going to give up for you the 5 things that I hold most dear. And each time it gets a little harder to say them, so I'm going to take a little glass of water. And I gave up pork, shrimp, lobster, champagne, and caviar. Don't ask me why champagne. I know it's kosher, but it was, ta-dam, I'm in love. And I want to prove to you, God, that I'm giving something up for you. And of course, I am going to light candles, because that was the first act that ignited my soul and found out what I was doing. And now, I don't have to go on with my journey. So I decided, that's it. I found what I was looking for. And I set home back to the United States. Of course, I passed through Cannes. I had to cover something in the Cannes Festival. I took the Concorde and arrived in New York. Now, what are you going to tell them when you come back to NBC? That you found God? It's almost an embarrassment. I could say the Weltanschauung, the Inbegeben, the Gestalt, I mumbled my way around. How was your trip, Molly? Wonderful. There was a vice president who at the time when I set out on my journey said, you know, Molly, I know exactly how you feel. When I feel this way, I go duck hunting. Maybe you'd like to go duck hunting with me. I said, you know, I don't think really. So when I came back, he said, so how was it? And I started to mumble again. And he says, oh, never mind. Did you hear? I said, did you hear what? He said, we got the Olympics. Oh, yes, I said, NBC got the Olympics in Moscow. Congratulations. Of course, wonderful. He said, but it's much more wonderful than you realize, young lady, because you have been chosen to run a human interest unit in Moscow. The network is going to cover the races, but you are going to be the one doing human interest stories on the contestants. Now, I don't know if you have any idea what kind of a job offer this was. If you think it was the job of the century, let me correct you and tell you it was really the job of the millennium. It was unfathomable for me to imagine such a job. But I'm standing there in front of this man, and I'm totally petrified. And he says to me, Molly, what's the matter? Come on, I know you feel inexperienced. You've never done the Olympics. Don't worry, we're going to send you to Lake Placid. You're going to cover the Winter Olympics, and you'll be fine. And I can't answer. And he said, it's a lot of money. And I'm silent. You see, what happened was that when I left Rio and went to France, I lit my candles on a Friday evening in a beautiful chateau. And the next morning, Shabbat, I took my car and I drove, and I had the most horrendous accident. The car was perched on a cliff, and beneath was the Mediterranean, and I came out with 3 cracked ribs. And I said, okay, God, don't push. Next Shabbat, I'm keeping. So now I'm standing in front of this man who is offering me this job, and I can't open my mouth. So he says, Molly, what is it? So I said, I can't take the job because I have committed to observe the Sabbath. And he goes with the most disdain that you can imagine. Molly City. Somebody as smart as you is going in for institutionalized religion. I felt like a shmata. I felt like I had given up my life. But I said, I made a commitment, and I'm going to stay with it. Now, where did I get the strength to refuse such a job offer? It was this young lady who had fortified me. She had given me books to read. I had started to learn. I had started to immerse myself in Torah learning. And something that was said by King Solomon at his conclusion of the book of Ecclesiastes just left an indelible mark on my mind. I will say it in Hebrew and then I will translate. Sof davar hakol nishma et Elokim yira et mitzvotav shemor ki ze kol ha'adam. The man who had the zchut, the merit to build our temple, the wisest man, the man who could commune with animals and plants, who had 1,000 wives and riches beyond measure, to whom the Queen of Sheba came to ask riddles. This man concludes his life by saying, when push comes to shove, when all is said and done, when everything has been heard, the job of man is to obey his Creator and to do his mitzvot, to do his bidding. And I decided that if it was good for King Solomon, I'd give it a try. I don't know if you know what happened to the Olympics. The Olympics of 1980 of Moscow were boycotted by President Carter. America did not participate in them. And when America doesn't participate, NBC doesn't cover. That's the way advertising works. We as Jews are taught to lead our lives in a dichotomous kind of manner. It's as almost we have 2 audio tapes playing simultaneously in our heads. We are taught, on the one hand, I am nothing but ashes and dust, afar va'efer. But on the other hand, bishvili nivra ha'olam kulo. For me alone, the entire world was created. And I'd like to share a secret with you. The reason they canceled the Olympics is because of moi. In French, me in English. Bishvili nivra ha'olam. I can't think of a better reason why they should cancel the Olympics. Can you? Well, the truth of the matter is that all my life I never wanted to be Jewish. I wanted to be royalty. I wanted to be Princess Diana, Grace Kelly, in my time, Jacqueline Onassis, Kennedy Onassis. I didn't want to be Jewish because Jewish was just Jewish. But I didn't realize that everything that I admired in the American Constitution came down from Mount Sinai. It's straight from our Torah. Everything that is of social justice, kindness to widows and orphans, all Jewish concepts. Everything that's not pagan in Christianity is Jewish. Everything that is sane in Islam is Jewish. We were given the mission. We are the royalty. But the royalty not with a crown and a scepter and sitting down and enjoying. We are the royalty in the sense that God gave us the mission to bring morality to the world, to bring light to the nations. And I didn't realize it. I didn't realize it. And then I started to learn about it. And this was the difference between me in the Six-Day War and me in 1997-98. 30 years of transformation, a paradigm shift, where I started to study about my heritage, to find out what it says in the Torah, to learn. And that was the big difference. So what did I do when the Six-Day War came? I ran to them. And I said, please love me. I'm a good Jew. I really, appeasement, placation. What was that? The difference? The difference was what happened 30 years later. But you know something? I wasn't alone in my placation. It was the syndrome of the proud Israeli who didn't know that you can't be an Israeli without being a proud Jew. Moshe Dayan, the most feared general in the Middle East after the Six-Day War. Do you know what the first thing he did was? He asked the army to take down the flag from Har Habayit, from Temple Mount. He went to the Mufti who turned his face to him. He'd just been conquered. Didn't want to speak to him. He says, please, we don't want to take your holy places. Your holy places? Yes, he was proud that he was on Har Habayit. Do you know he promised them that they wouldn't have to censor their speeches of sermons on the mountain anymore because King Hussein used to censor them. This is what we used to do. If we would give them, then they would accept us. All we want is just a little bit of sliver of a land. Just let us be in peace. But that is not the way. You know, the most liberating piece of information that I ever found out, it's in the Talmud, is that when Torah was given from heaven, brought down Lahar Sinai to Mount Sinai, the word Sinai is very much like the word Sin'ah, which is hatred. Together with being the chosen people, together with getting the Torah, jealousy and hatred for the Jew came down. It was liberating. It was like life is hard. Now deal with it. Because there will always be people who will hate us. There will always be a Haman. There will always be a Hitler. There will always be an Ahmadinejad. People who do not care how good we are. People who want to destroy us simply because we are Jewish. Because evil cannot face goodness. And when we bring down morality, they cannot tolerate it. And so, what did the Rebbe do? The Lubavitcher Rebbe do? When Nasser was arming himself in Sharm el-Sheikh, when Utant took out the United Nations, what did the Rebbe say? The Rebbe said to his followers, to his shluchim, go and put on tefillin. Tefillin, I thought? Is he out of his mind? Tefillin? We're going to be attacked, we're going to be decimated. Yes, tefillin. The Rebbe said that when a Jew puts on tefillin, he is a warrior, and the enemy is fearful of him with his crown on his forehead, on his arm. You know, General Ariel Sharon, when he was general, used to visit the Rebbe very often. And he would ask his advice. There's a recording of him asking the Rebbe some advice, and the Rebbe answers him, Torah and mitzvahs. And Mr. Sharon says, General Sharon, no, Rebbe, I mean tactically. And the Rebbe says, Torah and mitzvahs. And then He says, no, but strategically. And the Rebbe says, Torah and mitzvahs. Torah and mitzvahs. Yes, it sounds ludicrous, but it is exactly what is the ecological purifier of the air. This is not a new thing. This has been the way that Jews have fought adversity throughout the ages. Every one of us is a miracle that we are here today. It is not anything different. The Jews were always singled out for decimation throughout our history. You see, the Jew is a special creation. We are an Am Segula. And our prophets, 2,000 years, tried to tell us. Jeremiah and Isaiah would scream, you don't need Washington, you don't need Moscow, you don't need London. But at the time it wasn't London and Moscow and Paris. It was Assyria and Babylon and Egypt. You don't need them. You are God's special creation. And if you act like the supernatural creation that you are, then God will treat you that way. And if you decide to be a nation like all the rest, if you decide that you are a normal creation, then you are just a little lamb among 70 wolves, and then you are subject to the laws of nature. It is really very hard to accept it, but it's the truth. We have to be proud Jews. We have to purify the air with our acts of goodness and kindness, to do mitzvot, to bring down godliness in a tangible way. And that is how we become strong. We can learn from the Arabs. When you see an Arab, he has no shame. He walks around with his jalaba in the Heathrow airport. They take out their mats. They pray. And sometimes we hide our tzitzis, our macaroni straps, and we hide our yarmulke under a casquette or a beret or whatever. They are saying proudly, Allah Akbar. It's our job to say Allah Akbar because we were given that role. We should be proud. We should not be afraid. And then there's another side. We have to pray. We have to do good deeds. But we must also not forget to scream. We must scream because it hurts. The Rebbe said, when you stub your toe in the bathtub, is it going to help your toe if you scream? No, but you scream anyway because it hurts. When our people are being hurt, when suicide bombers are attacking them, when our people are being tortured, when our people are being Qassam rocketed, when people in Europe are being attacked, when anti-Semitism is showing its ugly head, we should stand up tall. And that was the difference. That's what I did. I founded MATCKH, Mothers Against Teaching Children to Kill and Hate, to bring to the world, anywhere, to lobby our presidents, our legislatures, our people, and especially our Jews, lift up our voices and say, this is unacceptable, this is child abuse. Everybody knows this is the worst form to teach a child to hate, no matter how just his cause. And what if they are right? Let's say, of course they are not. We should be proud, but we should fight it. What do you mean there is no connection between Temple Mount and our temple? How can we allow that to take place? So it's a dual, it's a dichotomous reaction. It's a dichotomous reaction that I came to after starting to acquaint myself with my heritage, after I started to learn. Euroshiurs, any shears. When I started to find out that I'm Jewish, that I am proud to be Jewish, that I'm the royalty, a royalty with a lot of hard work, a royalty that God willing will bring about to a redemption. And I believe that this is really the only way to face any kind of terror, whether it is a war or a personal terror, is to know who you are, to be proud of who you are, and not to be afraid to stand up for what you believe. Thank you very much.